Manipulators, I think, are generally so insecure of their skills that they'll use these other petty little tricks to maintain their positions. And if the leader, quote unquote, is prioritizing them instead of seeing the actual work, the actual skills, that whenever you see these big titles, don't follow. Just always keep on admiring them for their skill set, specific skill sets that they have, because that way you'll be grounded in facts of life and not see things from an emotional bias. It could be on the positive end or the negative end, right? But facts just keep you grounded. Yo guys, namaskaram. So back with another video for my English channel. I actually wanted to do a reaction, so I got a pretty interesting video of a guy, let's say from an engineering background. So let me just share my screen and then we can just watch the video together, have some sense. And towards the end, I'll also read something towards work in general. So I think this is the video. I got betrayed by corporate, my story. Probably this is the first full-fledged reaction that I'll do. So we'll just watch it. Probably I'll just increase it to 1.25. Okay.
Pushing the boundaries as a social media influencer. And today I'm going to push the boundaries a little bit more. Today I'm going to share with you a story about how I got betrayed by corporate. Now, before we get into my story of what happened with me, I'm going to put up a disclaimer to the video that this video can be triggering to some viewers and viewer discretion is advised. Our story begins in January of 2025, where a US-based startup reached out to me via email, and I was asked to consult their dev team about Shopify's architecture, and I was supposed to be helping them out. Now, for the next 2 weeks, I connected with them on a Google Meet call, where for 4 hours each day, they were presenting their screen and they were prompting ChatGPT 3, because ChatGPT 3 was the active version then, and they were prompting it in a loop. And they were copying the solution provided by ChatGPT straight up, and they were injecting in the code base, and they were hoping to make it run. Now, 2 weeks go by, and I helped.
So I think one very important thing that this guy mentioned is, I think it's also ties down with the recent fear of AI kind of being used as a replacement for humans. And I think this is precisely what this US startup, which this gentleman is talking about in this video, are also kind of doing. Now, an important thing to understand is probably, I think, in the age that we are living, not running from AI, because I see this as a general trend that, oh, AI will eat our jobs and things like that. Probably just have a mindset towards maybe learning certain things about AI. But as mentioned in this, I think this is also kind of outright stupid, because we think from a business owner perspective that just to maximize profits, we can go to any end, and then whatever mess or whatever spillover we have done, someone else will fix it. I think that's the subtle attitude. And when, let's say, someone starts fixing that, then we automatically start blaming that person for, like, why is it that you're fixing our mess. So I think this is also somewhat a similar situation, or probably something that would lead to in the coming section.
Them out enough so that they get to a good stage and I end my consultancy. The startup offered to compensate me for my hours. I declined the compensation for them and I told them that I usually put out my information for free anyway on my YouTube channel, so I'm not going to ask for compensation for my consultancy.
I think a very, you can say, noble-hearted person from that perspective, because whatever, this should be a rule for you in general as well, that whatever, let's say, time we are giving to quote unquote companies, corporations, we need to understand that these people work on this foundation. The center on which they work is money. If we are not playing by the rules that these companies have themselves laid out, I think in the long term we ourselves would kind of lose out, because we, I think this is more from an Indian context, wherein I've seen that, like, we believe in doing, let's say, quote unquote good karma or good actions. Of course, there's nothing bad with it, but not a lot of people kind of respect that, and they want to kick you out once you kind of start in that trajectory. So, and also the other thing that comes is, if you're not charging for our services, that means you're disrespecting our time, which also means that we are not respecting our own selves. If you're disrespecting our time, it essentially means that we're disrespecting our own lives. So I think, yeah, that's one lesson which probably should stay with us. Okay, let's keep moving forward.
They were thankful to me, and our agreement ended there. Now, a week after that, they reached out to me once again, offered me a position as a developer in their company, which I agreed to take. And I got my salary fixed, I got my working hours fixed, and I started working for them full time. Now, an important thing to note was in every call where the CEOs and me were present, they were always talking about giving me equity in the company. I had an incentive to work hard and gain some equity in the company. And they were always talking about growing the company to a $100 million valuation and then getting acquired by some big tech giant, which would set us up for our futures. So that was
Okay. So classic twist. I think a lot of startups kind of use this. Now this is coming from a lot of clients which keep consulting. A lot of people come to me and reach out to me. Fundamentally, this notion of greatness in the future is promised to you in exchange for, let's say, giving away all your valuable and precious time to us. Now, of course, that's a gamble that one needs to take, but then one also needs to understand that from an ESOP perspective, from a structuring perspective, let's say there is 100% shares. Ideally, how the founders have raised it, which calls them quote unquote a founder, is they would ensure that they have the maximum number of shares with them so that they can use it to maintain ownership in the company, or let's say to dilute their share percentages so that investors can invest. So you must always think from the other person's perspective. Let's say if you're an employee, right, that this trend of ESOPs and things like that, this just looks good. This is like a carrot being handed out on a stick, like wherein you are the mule and the business owner kind of sits on top of you, and he always keeps on showing you these false promises and hopes of the future and things like that. So ideally, what happens, as per my knowledge, is it's either 85 to 90%, the company kind of retains it for its founders, for its investors. The remaining 10%, 5%, or even in some cases, some clients had told me that there was just 1%. 1% of shares. So what they'll do within that 5%, they'll want all employees to kind of fight for shares. And whenever people say that, oh, we'll give you more shares and things like that, essentially what they're saying is that now within that 5%, we'll add more weight to it. So how this concept works is, you might have seen that the earlier an employee kind of joins a startup, the more benefit he gets. The reason being that, let's say, now assuming this 5%, we take this 5% as 100%. Right? So the first founding member can get 10% of that 5%. The next member can get 5% and things like that. So you see, with every successive addition, uh, the percentage that is left for you to, let's say, quote unquote, own or feel part as an owner of the company is getting low and low. But a lot of people kind of hide that, and partly because not a lot of people also like reading about how generally things work. And business owners, a lot of them, I think, use this principle of selective honesty. They'll sell you dreams and hopes and aspirations, but in our country specifically, like let's say if I speak from India, and I think this gentleman is also kind of working remotely from India, dreams don't pay the house rent, dreams don't pay for our electricity, dreams don't pay for our kids, dreams and hopes for the future don't, you can say, negate the present living, right? So that perspective is very important, that whenever you're also kind of getting into such quote unquote jobs, all the agreements which they have been promised should be laid out in the offer letter very explicitly, so that there is no way these people can kind of go back from their word. Because there's always a very famous saying that always trust the written word more rather than oral word, because who knows what person or which party might back off.
the incentive I had when I was starting my work for the company. Now, a little bit of problem statement needs to be addressed so that you know what my solution was and how it got completely backfired on me. So it was a Shopify app which was installed by multiple merchants, and our app was supposed to be injecting some elements into their storefronts via Shopify theme app extensions. If I simplify the problem a little bit, you can understand it like this. My Shopify app has been installed by eBay, Amazon, and Flipkart. We were supposed to inject some elements into their storefronts, and the basic solution that they were going with was writing all the JavaScript in one file that would manage injecting elements in all of the storefronts. Now, if we inspect element the websites of Amazon, eBay, and Flipkart, we will see that they have a different level of div selectors, different JavaScript selectors, and different components running on their web pages, which may or may not block our operations that we were trying to do. Now, the problem with using just one code for every merchant out there was if there was a bug introduced later in the development for one store, it would break every store in the process.
I think one very important lesson now, like you see his deductive reasoning, probably just having making sure like that's a very good attitude of being very proactive around certain problems that may happen in the future. I think one should also develop such an attitude wherein let's say now I'm like this channel is more from a philosophical perspective, so I'll try to inject that in our day-to-day living. Let's say whatever facets of life you live, right, it usually happens that you see that like you're so dependent on intensity and things like that, like that single point of failure as it's mentioned in this video, that if one thing goes wrong your entire system, the entire routine goes away, goes very. So very important thing is to have these buffer blocks wherein each segment of your life is kind of functioning independently. If there is one failure in let's say one function, probably an ideal state of life would be that at least the other parts of work are not being impacted. Now I know it's easier said than being done, but having I think such a mindset is important because whatever we are doing on machines, these are created by us humans, and if we can use our machines so effectively for us, why can't we use our own cells effectively? So I think, yeah, I think that's one very important point which I just wanted to reiterate. I know it's completely unrelated to this story.
This was something that I was against. So I proposed a solution to them where we would write dedicated JavaScript for each of the merchants that install our app. So that if one merchant's JavaScript theme gets broken, then it doesn't affect the other merchants. They approved the solution and I started working on it. And 2 or 3 months later, I got there. I got the code base to a stable state and I reduced their failure rates, whether it's webhooks, whether it's backend APIs. I optimized all of it. Now, 3 months after me working at the startup, their entire dev team left one by one due
Hmm. Okay, the person is very hardworking, we can say.
reasons they were not fired or whatever, leaving me alone, and I was the only
The only one person is kind of taking the entire brunt for the entire startup. And this is interesting. I think since he joined, I think in January 2025, just 3 months in, and a lot of people are leaving. I think whenever also this should be a rule for you. Let's say whenever one is joining a company, always be mindful of the type of environment, the type of people, uh, their actions. Because let's say whenever you're joining a new company, initially there's not a lot of things, let's say undergrounded, feeling-based messages which are being communicated verbally. But when you see the actions of people, they never lie. So there are always reasons for people to leave. Of course, we can say personal reasons. But if there's a place which treats you with joy, which treats you with love, very few people would want to kind of leave that place. Like I have had clients, a lot of them are working in super, you can say quote unquote fulfilled jobs. And the reason being because they have a very positive system. But those are like, very, very few.
developer working in the company. So I was managing front end, back end, the hosting solutions, the DevOps, the analytics, the billing module, everything. So I was happy working as the only developer in the company.
The important thing is, I think this gentleman has a sense of ownership, which I think a lot of people want, right, from their work. That feeling that my work is making a practical difference. So that's what kept him going. And I think the reason he says happiness is predominantly because you feel a sense of positive momentum, positive progress in life. That's one of the core tenets to be happy in life in whatever thing, whatever field you are, right? Whatever thing you're doing.
Now, a couple months go by, and a new developer gets hired into the company. We will call him Max. Max had a decade of front end engineering experience. And how the company saw me and Max was I was supposed to be working on the backend modules, and I was supposed to be giving him APIs so that he can create front ends which can consume those APIs.
Okay. One more thing, one very important thing which is being mentioned here is the decade old experience. So I think I had read this somewhere. I don't know, maybe from, uh, I think Pariku or someplace. wherein he has mentioned in his book that a person usually does the same thing over and over again and then calls that specific thing an experience. Whereas I think the definition of experience is you're just expanding into new terrains of life per se. Now, this also comes from a work perspective because a lot of people, I think, just stick to the same old patterns, having a stable, let's say, kind of routine from a work perspective. And we label them as experience. We think that, oh, he has worked for so many years, he might be such an experienced guy. But frankly speaking, I think if you want to know deeply about what experiences a person, one way to kind of look at it is just understanding how willing the person is to take new challenges and confront them head on, how willing the person is to break his or her own limitations in whatever field it is, right? Since I'm not in, let's say, quote unquote professional engineer or a coder, I couldn't give you a specific example from coding specifically, but in general, let's say if you want to analyze the words that people generally speak of, just always validated through their actions and past choices or a certain bent or inflection of point that those people might be having.
Now he started making some front end components which were using the back end components that I used to give him out as APIs. What I noticed was he was not calling the APIs that I was giving out to him. Instead, he was copying the whole code of my backend API and duplicating it in his front end component.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, see, as I was mentioning, from that past perspective, right, that people always repeat things. So I think in his earlier experiences, he might just have copy pasted on someone else's hard work and kind of treated it as his own, and then that kind of made the way for him for those paychecks and things like that. So I think a similar pattern was being done.
As is. So I looked at it and I started scratching my head as what's going on here. But I didn't say anything, just left it be, thinking that I will refactor it in the future, which I did. So this continued for some time. Now, what Max did was he smooth talked his way to the CEO.
That's very important. So I think always standing your ground up whenever you see such things happening, just try to call that behavior out then and there itself. I think we not taught specifically, like I'm saying from an Indian workspace perspective, to have a healthy conflict management, be it in any working professional capacity. Because ideally, what we see is, let's say, if I'm disagreeing, how people take it generally, if I'm disagreeing with a certain opinion of your, a certain way of work, people usually think that it's an attack on their personality, but a very crucial determining factor is like separate the person and the work that he is doing. I think it's a famous thing, separate the art and the artist. So I think always having this bent of mind to stand your ground based on the facts. Now, a fact here basically means the type of action or the work that that specific person is doing. In this case, as the gentleman had said, that Max had clearly copy pasted those lines of code and marketed as his own. So clearly outlining that why are you doing this, and kind of just taking proper measures. I think escalating it, if I'm using the corporate lingo correctly, and just making certain people aware about the kind of practices that are being going on, so that it's always best to just document whatever things are kind of going on, right?
Convincing him that we should have used ChatGPT to begin with to maintain the merchant's JavaScript files. Now, a call happened where the CEO was there, Max was there, and I was there, where they started questioning my approach, which they themselves approved, and they started.
So you see, I think the point with which I started this video, that will create all the mess, but now it's your responsibility to fix it. And if you're fixing it, then also we'll come at your back. We'll try not to help you to just help our company grow, in which you say that we want to have so many dreams and things like that. So a reason lot of, I think there's a very important study which says that a lot of startups fail. I think 99% is predominantly because of these subtle human behavioral practices. Once the person is very aligned on his work, I think these small issues, just punching let's say shooting a gun in on your own foot, these type of practices wouldn't be very predominant.
Questioning why I didn't use ChatGPT to get the solution. So I told them that they were wasting so much time with ChatGPT 3 before during my consultation time period that it wasn't feasible for me to use ChatGPT once again to arrive at the solution. And the arguments that I heard was mind blowing, to say the least. They told me that back then the active version of ChatGPT was version 3, and now we have ChatGPT 5, which is obviously better. That was the first one. The second one that I heard was everything is a higher level context. If I ask a higher level question to ChatGPT, surely it will give me the.
Now this is some managerial things. I don't know, just playing around with words, not being very specific. With these people, say be specific. Can you just give us examples like what a context is? Let's say if you're in certain situations, just I think this habit is very important. Standing your ground. Everything is high level context. Just ask better questions. How do you define a question? What is better? Please be specific around these things. I think such type of attitude, very dissecting, logical attitude is very important. So the more you kind of indulge in it, the better you kind of get at it. Because see, if your foundations are very strong, let's say if 2 plus 2 is 4, you know that, right? Whatever opinions people may have, they cannot argue with this fact. Try, whenever you're getting into argument, try to make that argument be based on facts. Now I know humans are emotional beings and things like that, but this is just from a professional corporate setting.
Solution. I wanted to facepalm myself hearing that, but my camera was on in the meet, so I didn't do it. And the third argument that I heard was is that Amazon is firing so many engineers because their AI is so good. So it must mean that they are using
Very interesting. So they don't factor in the fact that Amazon might have hired world class engineers from the world who have actively studied about AI, who are actively giving their time to learn about the recent developments and are actively tweaking the process. Meanwhile, the startup founder, like the entire engineering team, is kind of going away. So you see the two contradicting realities. So this is very important. If any person for that matter comes to you, they are using it, what's the difference? So the actions of what you have been doing as a person, as a quote unquote leader, should also be used as facts and being brought to you right at the face. That's why I said that it's very important to document each and everything. It means that they are using it properly and we aren't. Of course, how can one person do everything when he's the only one kind of working? Anyhow,
AI properly and we are not. Let that marinate for a second there. So I told them out of my integrity as a developer that we had wasted so much time on ChatGPT, so it's not feasible to do that again. And this is where the yelling and screaming started to happen. Max and the CEOs, all of them started yelling at me because I should just use ChatGPT because they were so pro AI and they didn't.
hmm. So repeating the past mistakes again and again, like what's the point of shooting yourself again and again, right? They tried that approach. That's the reason that this person kind of got hired by them, right, in the first place. Anyhow.
like the fact that I was anti AI. And this is where the first red flag appeared in my head that Max was able to convince the CEOs that ChatGPT is the end all be all solution. And if I'm not using it, then it must mean that there is something wrong with me. So after that,
Okay, so I think a lot of so I've done a podcast again with that psychologist, which I keep on mentioning. You can just check it out in this channel. So I'd asked him about I think manipulators in general. So I think this situation kind of talks exactly about that. Manipulators, I think, are generally so insecure of their skills that they'll use these other petty little tricks to maintain their positions. And if the leader, quote unquote, is prioritizing them instead of seeing the actual work, the actual skills that is being done on the ground. I think like that speaks a lot about the culture. And if you're being let go, or if you're being fired, or if you're having beef with certain companies, I think it's always better to just leave. Don't take it to heart, because I think every one of us kind of has these experiences. The more older you grow, the more you realize that they're just a varied type of people. And I think your courage, when such people who have at least somewhat courage to speak about certain things kind of come out, This just tells you about like not everything's easy in life. A lot of things kind of keep going on and on, but that's the battle. Okay.
At yelling and screaming, I just thought, why bother arguing? I just told them that you are free to do whatever you want. I have laid out the architecture that can seamlessly integrate ChatGPT into it if you wanted to. So they said okay, and we left the call. Then some weeks later, a deadline arrived, and I was informed that my salary has been cut in half as an incentive for me to work harder.
See, so those subtle wordplay, that your salary, let's say if I'm earning rupees 100, or in their terms, a dollar. So that's been cut to 50 cents or 50 rupees. Immediately, one should have the balls to kind of confront all of that, even at the cost of losing, your job. That's why I keep on saying that it's very important that whenever you're starting a job, don't grow very lavishly in your lifestyle. Don't grow very dependent on your job that this would keep on continuing forever. Who knows what might happen in the future? It's always better to, as the older generation say, these days a lot of people keep saying to you, invest, invest, and things like that. Yeah, it's good to invest, but it's also far more prudent to save at times, not invest in your compulsions because of certain situations. Because when you need to stand your ground, there should be a solid foundation, from a savings perspective. Most people are not able to leave their jobs. Why? Because they have bills to pay, EMIs to pay, loans to pay, maybe children's educations and things like that. So you see how this cycle kind of keeps going on and on. The more free you keep yourself from bondages, which are really not needed, which are just your compulsions, I think the more tough, let's say from an opinion perspective, you'll get, wherein you're able to stand your ground. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Which I didn't think much of. I was able to bottle it in, and I saw that as an opportunity. And I kept working
Yeah, but this guy has a very, let's say, proactive leader type mindset. Na, ki if there's something bad happening, I'll not squibble about it. I'll not talk bad about it. I'll even work more harder. So very few people have such a mindset wherein opportunities are seen like this in times of crisis and things like that. So yeah, I think that's a good trait to pick up.
hard, and I achieved the deadline. Now, keep in mind, while I had a deadline on my head for 1 week, Max was also working on a module, supposedly, which I wasn't hearing what the update was on. So then some weeks go by, 2 weeks go by, and I found out that Max was actually out of the office for his eye surgery. Nobody told me that. I just happened to ask, and that's when I knew. So
So I think if communication is also being kind of not talked about in open, that's also a very major red flag because uh, you see the double standards. On one end, they are forcing one person to be very accountable, and on the other hand, the other person has so many issues, and no one kind of lifts even a finger for them. Why? Because maybe he might have sweet talked or whatnot, right? Anyhow,
I thought that for the last 3 weeks that he's been out of the office, surely he must have gotten something in his module that I was supposed to take over now because the CEOs told me that I have to take over Max's work. I look at the pull request and it was only 4 files in the pull request. And it was barely 20 lines of code that he wrote.
damn. So 10-year person, you see. Okay, I'll just turn this down. Okay, so a 10-year-old experienced person is barely able to write 20 lines of code. So that's on average, I think the amount of coding that person might have done is 2 lines of code per year. I think a person who is in eighth class, quote unquote, a 14, 15-year-old child might be able to write more better codes. No, or at least he can write more than 2 codes per year in his life. I think so. Okay, moving forward.
Which to me was another red flag. And I told the CEOs that
There were like a lot of red flags, but I think the goodness of the person kind of he wanted to keep all in his heart and keep on improving, working harder and harder.
why is there so much less code submitted by him? They didn't think much about it and they told me to just continue my work. And this is where the equity conversation started to happen with me. The CEOs were constantly telling me that if I get the company to a profitable state, then they are going to offer me profit sharing and equity in the company as an incentive for me to work harder. Now, the mistake that I made was I forgot about the 50% pay cut that I just received and I prioritized my future over my current financial situations.
Yeah, I think very self-reflective that the person knows about. Uh, Now, when we look in hindsight, that what actually to prioritize on. So always work on facts, not on hopes, dreams, ambitions, and futures. Whatever life you have right now, right? Whatever vicinity, those are the facts of your life. We can change these facts slowly and steadily. Have a long-term hope that okay, this is the type of vision that I envision for myself. But it's very important to be very much grounded in the facts of your environment.
I just thought if I get this company to a good state, then I'm set for life. My future is secured, basically. So I kept working on my stuff. And last month, August, is when I received a invitation for a call by one of the CEOs. I get on the call thinking this is just another one of those updates calls. So I get told three things that shook me to my very core. The first thing that I was told was that I'm not communicating enough with the company CEOs.
Okay, so if a person just wants to do his work and does not want to make a show of it, he's not doing enough. Whereas if you pick up the practical data, that just speaks otherwise. I think this is a very, very big problem in corporates that sometimes it becomes a lot about theatrics and a lot about speaking unnecessarily, wherein there's no substance, and then that kind of just sets the person on a back foot. So I think there was a very good book on introverts and extroverts. I don't remember the title, but yeah, the core premise of it is that extroverts succeed because they're just able to speak, and a lot of them is just bullshit. Not a lot of those thoughts are quote unquote in well solid grounded facts. They just speak. So I think that point kind of comes here.
Which I found so hilarious because the company CEOs were the ones who were deciding what I was working on and what my deadlines were. And now they are coming back and telling me that they have no idea of what I am working on. So I told them that, and they told me that I should be just more clear with communications. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. The next thing that I heard was Max was now the engineering manager. And I just
So you see, person not working, just knowing how to sweet talk is quote unquote manager. So I think just a general rule, whenever you see these big titles, he's so and so manager, he's so and so. Like, don't get swayed by them because they're not living their lives, and also don't treat them as God or people who are very higher on the pedestal from you. No person, for that matter, even so-called godmen, whatever they are, like on a perfect beings. Every human is an imperfection, striving towards perfection. So whenever you see these big titles, don't follow. Just always keep on admiring them for their skill set, specific skill sets that they have. Because that way you'll be grounded in facts of life and not see things from an emotional bias. It could be on the positive end or the negative end, right? But facts just keep you grounded.
want you to focus on the reasoning behind it. The reasoning behind Max becoming the engineering manager over me, even though he joined 4 months after I was hired in the company, is that he was living in America, the same time zone as the CEOs. Let that marinate for a second there. I was looked
Hmm. Okay, how does I don't know, I might be wrong, but how does living in the same time zone kind of helps? Okay, yeah. I think how I kind of now understand it, probably there might be more better chances of communication because when this guy is sleeping, those guys are awake talking to each other a lot. And I think a lot of offices which are not focused on real work just waste their time on talking. A lot of big things. We'll do this, that. But when you take practical actual data from their lives, it just doesn't back their big claims. So yeah, again coming back to focus on actions, not words.
over for the engineering manager position because I live in India and he was selected because he lives in America.
Wow.
That was the reasoning behind it. And the third thing that happened was I got informed that my salary has been cut down significantly, even though I was offered an increment just a month ago. This shook me to my very core.
Okay. uh, this is very interesting. So first this person had, let's say, rupees 100 as in salary that got cut to 50, then he got an increment. I'm assuming it might be 30%, 40%. So again, 30-40% of rupees 50, right, is 65 or 70 rupees. So already on a net positive, they are at a positive 30 from the initial offer that he was kind of being paid. Now, these numbers are on assumptions, but still, just to understand the math. So still, even coming down to 70, they're still reducing that. So I think very terrible. Probably certain insights that we can take is just standing your ground up when it is really needed.
And I started panicking. And I became desperate. And I told them that from now on, if there is some talk of increment, let that be an increment of equity rather than an increment of salary. Because in a desperate measure, I was trying to secure my future with them. not secure
Hmm.
my current financial situation.
I think the person kind of, this gentleman kind of got lured a lot by hopes, dreams, and ambitions, and it happens. It's human. There's nothing much to grill the person on because every one of us does these mistakes. But it's important we keep learning from each person who kind of courageously share these stories like with us, right? Because not a lot of people speak openly about things. At least this person has the guts, if I might say.
They actually thanked me for bringing that point up, and they started rambling about how some Google engineers secured their future by securing some equity at an early stage. So after
Yeah, selling stories instead of rooting one, in fact. So, this is a classic trick from sales people because CEOs essentially are salesmen, right? You need to understand they need to sell to investors, sell to their employees, so that they can keep this whole facade running. If there is genuine real work that is at the foundation, a lot of these salesmanship wouldn't be needed. Probably the work, there's a very important saying, let the work speak for itself. Because if there is some actual work, then probably it would just speak for itself, or at least it would be there. I'm not saying it from, let's say, selling perspective when you're talking to customers and bringing them in. That's a different ball game altogether. But in general, from a managerial perspective, we need to be very sharp around certain quote unquote opinions that these people kind of keep throwing because opinions are not facts. Someone else's opinions should not become facts for living our lives.
the conversation ended and Max was now the engineering manager, he started asking updates from me on Saturday and Sunday. Both days he pinged me on Slack what the update is. And I had to inform him that I was out of the office, but he didn't care. And on Monday, I received an email
Okay, so not respecting, let's say, work life boundaries. I think Americans are more pro on work life balance, aren't they? Like they have their whole weekends planned. But why do they think that the subtle mindset just because we have hired you, there's a subtle connotation that you're our slave. I don't know when such mindset would go because this clearly shows that there's no respect of work life balance, right? Okay, going forward, I need you to acknowledge assignments immediately upon receiving them. Okay, immediately. That means that if one is sleeping while one is sleeping, if you ping me, because technically, as an American, you're working when I'm sleeping. So if you send me an assignment, how would I wake up from my sleep and then accept it? Isn't this weird? Very weird. Okay, so you see how these unrealistic unrealistic expectations are set upon you, so that from stress you just leave on your own, so that they don't just become the bad guys, and then this whole facade of fakeness kind of keeps going on. Okay, proactively flag any blockers or delays before the deadline. Okay, the person was very proactive in working and solving issues, right? When he brought that solution up. Why is this being said? Okay, but the reason that projects are being delayed is because the same person, Max, is on 2 weeks, 3 weeks of holidays, right? He has barely written 20 to 30 lines of code. Okay, so you see like how irrational these arguments are. Okay, respond promptly to outreach, especially when deliverables are due. Okay, this person is delivering, right? Mm, This guy said, I think, right? This gentleman is delivering on time, but that person is out of office. Okay, silence is not acceptable in these situations. Clear communication is just as important at the work itself. Please confirm the current status of A and show these expectations are met consistently. Okay. But how can an idiot who is not working expect things from me just because he's quote unquote on a managerial title? Okay, so I think a lot of red flags because I think Jordan Peterson talks about it very beautifully that like once you're pushed a little bit, they'll keep on pushing you, pushing you, pushing you until you stand your ground at a point and say, okay, this is enough. Then automatically there would be conflict. Don't fear conflict. Sometimes it's the only way out to understand your ground, right? So I think these are very important lessons.
from Max where he laid out some ground rules for me. You can see that in the screenshot that I attached. This actually shook me to the core and I felt sick to my stomach. I was this guy that was dedicated to the company, that I was working on weekends, I was keeping myself awake late nights, and I was working 7 days of the week. I'm attaching my GitHub.
Damn. Okay, so this person has 2200 roughly. Let's just round about. 2,200 contributions. Okay, this is not easy to achieve, right? You see the work ethic the person has. So this is data, right? Can't the engineering manager, quote unquote, see this? But yeah, we need to be very, very proactive and kind of lay these issues out whenever they come, so that they don't keep pushing you, for that matter, on the back foot.
activity, so you can verify that. You will see a lot more contributions in the later half. I went from being this guy that was holding up the entire architecture of the app to now just this guy who's in the company. Who cares? We will hire someone else. Let's just cut his salary down and look him over for promotions. So I handed my 2 weeks in. I got on a call with them. I ended my tenure there, and here I am now. Now I know that
Hmm. So you see how people are sometimes forced into resigning uh, due to the idiotic policies that they bring up.
some of you may be worried about my career. And let me clear those questions up. Am I hurt emotionally? Yes, I am. Do I have any clients that I can work with now? Of course. Yeah, I do. This is what the advantages of being a freelancer is. You can just tap into your existing connections and you can find work in no time. Am I going to attach my emotions to a job ever again? No, I'm not going to make that mistake again. This one job where I thought about securing my future very clearly told me that they don't give a shit about me. And this is a lesson that I will have to carry with me for the rest of my life. This is where I started empathizing with people who lie in their resumes, do whatever they have to do to secure the job, take as much salary as they can from the company's budget. I started empathizing with all of those people. And I know that there is a responsibility for me as an influencer that I should not be encouraging you.
Okay. So I don't think empathize might be the right word here. People who lie on their resumes, people who do anything to, uh, let's say, save their salaries on the company budget, things like that. Maybe because the person is hurt emotionally, he sees that just to ruin someone else, it's over. I think a lot of people do that, and I am totally aware of the malpractices happening. But consider it from a long-term perspective. I don't know. This is again a personal belief. I too have had clients, but uh, why should the victim have an empathetic perspective? I think it should be the person who is kind of inflicting these tragedies should have empathetic perspective, right? Like, if you're in a managerial position, some managers set some people off for the rest of their life. Some people are treated as good mentors. So it's not that they're not good people around. It's just that we cannot limit our life to certain bad experiences which just had happened randomly in our life, and attribute them as permanent scars. No matter, I think, whatever toughness you have, we should learn to read the room. That okay, if there are these certain types of people, this is the language I'll speak with them. So these are the rules which have been laid out by you. These are the rules which I'll also kind of now adhere to. But at least your humanity and your kindness should never go out of the window. Always having a professional attitude. And if someone screws you over for retaining their job, do you really think they're happy in life from a long term perspective? Because these things are always within oneself, deep in their conscious. Now, of course, no one talks about these are practical realities. But I think from a more humane perspective, it's very important to just see the long term consequences from your conscience as to how it would impact you. Okay, moving forward.
Guys to lie on your resume or draw money as much as you can from the companies. I still disapprove of those practices, but all I can say right now is I understand. So this was my story. So the takeaway for you in my story is never attach your emotions to the job. All you are there for is a transaction. You go in, get your work done, get paid, and then you live your life outside of the office. Never make the mistakes that I made, which is attaching my self-worth and my future to my employer. Because at the end of the day, no one cares about you, and you're gonna have to look out for yourself. That's really about it. See you in the next one.
Hmm.
I have always
Okay. That's an interesting video. So I think the last lesson, never attach your emotions to the job. Okay, I kind of disagree to it. Never attach your emotions to the wrong job. So okay, I just wanted to read the comments as well. You are an emotional fool, especially. Okay, it's easy to judge when person is having the courage to speak their heart out, right? Very courageously. Okay, if I see this person, okay, who is this? The efficient frontier. Okay, so he has, I don't know, no face, nothing. It's easy to comment. Uh, I don't know. So you see how weird it gets. Okay, let me see. Come back.
I have always been about pushing.
That shook me to the core. Okay, it's not a scam. It's just an honest person trying to make his way in an honest. Great. Ref of passage. Yes. Yeah, this family thing always judge people by their actions, not their words. Okay, I just don't want to read it because I think people are not respecting the courage that this person has had. Right? Okay. So I think now coming to the importance of work. So there is a philosopher, uh, Acharya Prashant, and he has this book released by the name of Truth Without Apology. So let me just open my Kindle, and I just wanted to read to you. Okay, so hopefully this might be visible. Okay, so on work, he kind of mentions things on work. Okay, so loveless work is joyless life. If your work is not lovable, life won't be livable. Work is not just a compartment in your daily schedule, it's the most dominant, most identity defining aspect of your life. So, you see how much importance should work be given. The right work. Your days revolve around it, your thoughts are shaped by it, and your relationships are influenced by it. To disregard the significance of work is to ignore a central axis of your existence. Because we are in the wrong jobs, I think such emotions trigger us a lot. But let's say if you're on the right battlefield, wherein getting up back again and again is fun in itself, then that isn't a problem. So I think from a coding perspective also, learning about languages and things like that, right, that's a very joyful work. So that's why no matter how many failures you get, you just love the act of it. That's why I've always urged those standing at a career crossroad, never allow a discord to rise between who you are and what you do. If your work demands that you compromise on your values, then every paycheck becomes a quiet betrayal of yourself. If you live divided, you will live discontent. Your work is not some external machinery you operate, it is a mirror, it reflects your inner constitution. So, you see how the importance of values kind of comes into place. Don't fool yourself by saying I work only for money. My real life begins after office hours. There's no such division because work in general takes up 50% of your life, right? 8 hours you're sleeping, 2 to 3 hours. Let's say you're kind of setting yourself up for breakfast, bath, food, and things like that. So only the remaining 12 hours, let's say if you're working for 8 to 10 hours, 1 to 2 hours in traffic, you see how work just consumes the entirety of your life. He says that there is no such division, you're one indivisible consciousness, and every hour at work either honors that truth or erodes it. So, your work should be an expression of your being. Can you truly be a gentle, loving father to your children and yet labor for a company that slaughters innocent animal babies to sell packaged meat? Is your compassion limited to your home? Is your integrity a weekend project? Let that contradiction haunt you until it is resolved. Let your actions express your true nature. Let the one who acts be indistinguishable from the truth they claim to live by. There must be no mask between who you are and how you work. Because if you do not love your work, you will find it hard, perhaps impossible, to love your life. So I think, yeah, this is one excerpt which I really wanted to read. That whenever we are choosing work, I think certain experiences might harm us emotionally a lot, but if we are operating on work from the right center, probably it wouldn't be much of a challenge. And yeah, let me know what you feel about this video. I don't know how long it would be, but yeah, until then, this is Debu Ki Dastak from Debu Ki Dastak. Bye.